The last pattern in the organizing data series is called replace subclass with fields. It's sort of the opposite of the replace type code patterns, where here our motivation is that we have these subclasses from this common abstract parent class, and they differ only in the constant values that they return. There's really no behavioral difference, and they don't really need to be subclasses. We can simplify this a little bit. So if we want to bring these classes back up into the parent class, our first step is going to be replacing references to them, and that would essentially be replacing their constructors. So let's start by creating some factory methods on this parent class. And it's going to return the base type. And at this point, we would go through the code and replace any references to the constructors on these classes with references to these factory methods on the parent class. Now we could get some compiler help from that if we wanted to. If we wanted to, for example, make this constructor private, the code isn't actually going to compile because this one up here would need to use it. That might help us identify where else in the code this is being used very temporarily, but we don't want to keep that as part of the pattern. Or again, in Visual Studio, we could just use one of our tools here, say find all references. That should tell us anywhere in the code that it's being used. The point is that once we've replaced all of the constructor usages down here, essentially nothing in the code at this point should have an explicit reference to the male class or the female class. It's all happening behind the scenes through the common person class. So now that all those calls have been replaced, and of course we could recompile the code and run all of our tests, now we're going to declare some fields for these constant methods on the superclass. This is because we'll be replacing these properties at some point. And then we'll add a protected constructor here. And now the constructors that are used on the child classes can now just use that parent constructor directly. So we'll make those public. So now even the constructors on these child classes just pass through their control directly back up to the parent class. They just delegate that responsibility up to there. So now the parent class is getting these fields set, but consuming code is still using these fields. So we can one at a time replace them. Let's start with isMale. This one is no longer abstract. And instead returns this value. And since it's no longer abstract, we no longer override it. So any references to these male and female objects throughout the code are also, because we've already replaced the constructors, references to person objects. So they're using this field directly instead of through the delegation to the child class. Now we'll do the same thing with the code property. And since that's no longer abstract, we no longer override it. So at this point, all these classes do is just delegate their construction back up to the parent class. So we don't really need that anymore either. So here we'll return a new object of type person. Now nothing anywhere in the code, oops, forgot to make that no longer abstract. Now nothing anywhere in the code uses this male object, so we'll get rid of that. And then we'll do the same thing here with female. And now nothing uses that. That's pretty much it for the pattern itself. We can clean up a little bit here, make these auto-implemented properties at this point. Get rid of the backing field, and then set the auto-implemented property. And do the same thing for this one. Just to clean it up and make it a little bit simpler. And that's pretty much it for the replace subclass with fields pattern. Thanks for watching.